Chapter 66, Calm Before the Storm. Looks like that old fool finally understood what's going on. Good thing you put up that barrier, or I couldn't have dodged this. I gave a pointed look at Loki's pierced should. Or tried to at least. Is this what you consider dodging? Interesting, I call that getting stabbed. Spare me your sarcasm. This is Gungnir, Odin's legendary spear. It can pierce pretty much anything, and paired with Odin's clairvoyance, it is considered a death sentence for anyone below King Magus. Thus, I consider surviving as having dodged this attack. A death sentence for anyone below King Magus sounds terrifying. But you mentioned Odin's power being clairvoyance just now, wasn't it reading fate? I was. Due to the fiasco with the humans, Odin chose to abandon the path set for him and chose something slightly different from his original power to comprehend as a King Magus. It is not uncommon for people like us to change our path for one reason or another. I take it you have chosen to change as well then? Quite perceptive. My original power was warmth and life, but I found that I didn't just want to bring life. I don't want to just add beings to the world and let them be at the whims of fate. I want to bring change. You are doing all this for the humans you created? I merely intend to take responsibility for the situation I put them in. Odin and Heir may deny the sin we have committed, but I will not hide behind those hollow excuses. With a majestic movement, he grabbed the spear that pinned him down and pulled. Gungnir remained where it was. Mind giving me a hand? Such glorious ambitions, and you can't even remove a spear from your body? It turns out that not only does Gungnir excel at piercing through things, but also remaining stuck in them. The final solution was to lift part of the ground and just drive the spear through completely and receive it on the other side. What do you plan to do now? Wait for my wounds to heal and for Odin to arrive. Odin is coming here? Well, the two of us killed both his sons, and on top of that you seem to be able to hide from his visions. He will definitely come to destroy us. The only thing uncertain is how many others he will bring. That doesn't sound good. Give me Thor's hammer, I'll try to break through before they reach here. You'll never make it. Thor needed more than a year to just scratch the surface, and that was with every possible advantage. Good thing I'm not Thor then. Loki seemed pessimistic, but still went to retrieve the hammer wherever he hid it. Now, with both Thor and his hammer, I had an innate understanding of lightning just waiting to be absorbed. It took me 1 month to fully assimilate the thunder origin. I had assimilated an artificial innate understanding of lightning. Unfortunately, I had used a shortcut and thus my understanding was somewhat lacking and artificial. Now I would have to fuse my understanding into a fruit. The process was surprisingly simple. I willed it and a golden yellow apple grew from one of my branches. The only downside, half my magic was drained to create that one apple. A shadow rushed over and devoured the apple. Ratatoskr had, as per contract I made with him, received my first enlightenment fruit. A lightning symbol appeared on its forehead and it curled up into a ball. Digesting the enlightenment fruit would probably take some time. In retrospect, I might have been better advised not to grow this apple and disable a peak combat force on my side. I had no idea how long Rat was going to sleep. Not that it helped much when it was awake, but still. The next morning, Epli and the other elves left in a hurry. They had been around for quite a while, but mostly kept to themselves. Now they left without any explanation. Should I stop them and ask some questions? No, Epli will just dodge the question or lie. I'll just ask Loki to follow them. No need to ask me to follow them. They are returning upon the call of the Queen. She probably wants to pull out her people before this place turns into a living hell. Chapter 67, Odin's Move, the Congregation. Another 2 weeks passed. I had somewhat grasped my innate understanding of lightning and its possible applications. Then the day of reckoning had arrived. After today, this grudge between Odin and Loki would probably be written off. As for me, Odin certainly hated me, but I had no real grudges with him. Why did all of this look like my fight? Why did I even join this fight? Bad news, Eldar. Odin got the elves, the Jotuns, the fire giants, and the Aesir. Now, he is marching on us from all directions. I felt like I had just thought of something important. What was it again? Never mind, it couldn't have been that important. They were approaching from all sides. Jotuns from the north, fire giants from the west, Aesir from the south, and elves from the east. Barrier up. Units 1 to 20, battle positions. My 20 savage beasts each was accompanied by a group of beasts and my subordinates. What a shame that many of them would die. Also, Loki, aren't the Jotuns under your command? I kind of led them by the nose and Odin revealed my little trick. So you made more trouble. Let me see if I can at least dissuade the elves from taking part in this madness. Amplifying my voice with magic, I called out towards the east. Are the elves here to participate in this attack? I've heard of a prophecy that should make you think twice before marching troops over here. For a while, no response came from the elves. Then a cocky, female voice boomed in response. Such a prophecy does indeed exist, but it was made by a young and unreliable girl. Seeing as you are hungry for power and kill without mercy, we will take the initiative and unroot you before you grow further. I am not power hungry. I only ever defended against enemies trying to attack me or got revenge on people who killed my own child. All these actions were just. This time the female voice, presumably the elven queen, didn't respond. Instead, Odin's aged voice reached me. If you getting revenge for your child's murder is just, then how can you stop us? Was it not you who killed both my sons? Damn, that was some solid argumentation. However, it was not entirely true. I have done no such thing, Odin. I have killed Thor in self-defense, but Baldur's death is not on me. Have you not created the arrow that took his life? Since when can you fault the creator of a weapon for the deaths caused by his creation? That is simply nonsense. Then why did you attack the Muspel clan? They were not the ones who killed your child. They merely created the weapon that made it possible. They sent the one who killed my child. I didn't send the one who killed yours. Don't try to justify your act of ganging up on me. You will regret it. A feeble excuse. And an even feebler threat. We have you surrounded, and even with all your beasts, you can't pose much of a threat to us. Are you determined to go through with this then? Hundreds of lives will be lost and you will gain nothing. All you do is waste lives. Wait, waste lives? I didn't get to continue this train of thought as the leaders of every group took to the skies. I let them pass the barrier unobstructed. After all, a cage served to keep things inside, not outside. Now that their leaders had charged in, the 4 armies followed suit and quickly approached the barrier. They seemed quite confident, outnumbering the enemy gave them courage. 2 battlefields had come into existence. One in the air, between Grand Duke and King Magi, and another on the ground, between those below. At first, the battle below looked like it would end in a landslide victory for the attacking party. However, the barrier quickly gave them a nasty surprise. Their charge was completely halted by the lightning arcs dancing around the barrier. To make matters worse, the undergrowth behind the Aesir troops burst and ADWYRMS commenced a pincer attack. They were all mutated to lightning WIRMS, one of the possible applications of my innate understanding. The other 3 armies each found 2,500 ordinary beasts of all kinds at their backs. The tides of the battle below turned in an instant, and the attackers were greatly flustered as their formation began to disintegrate. The fight in the air hadn't even begun yet when it already came to a stop. Odin seemed devastated at the sudden turn of events. How can this be? You were clearly limited in the number of beasts you could control. I evolved and the limit increased. Too bad you didn't know about that. Also, do you guys know what an allergy is? Yes, but what does this have to do with anything? Nothing much, just that you've been doing some pretty heavy breathing just now. That may not have been the best thing to do. Chapter 68, Odin made some miscalculations. You're hinting at pollen, aren't you? Sorry to say, but people at our level don't have allergies and are immune to most poisons. If you are betting on us going down due to some small seeds in the air, that won't happen. As a being closely associated with nature, the Elven Queen was the first to pick up on my hint. Just that she was a slight bit off on the possibility of danger. I wasn't hoping for the pollen themselves to do much damage. I have higher expectations of the lightning sealed within. Horror flashed in the expressions of all the leaders. Before they could do anything about it, I detonated all the pollen close to them. The lightning on the outside did them little harm, but the lightning inside hit them where they were unprotected. In unison, they vomited a mouthful of blood as their internal organs were probably charred black. After vomiting, the first reflex of some was to take another deep breath. Wrong decision. As new air filled their burnt lungs, so did new pollen. After the second detonation, all the Jotuns dropped to the ground. Their internal defenses were presumably the weakest. The other groups had used various ways to avoid major damage. The fire giants had it the easiest, they couldn't get burnt. The elves had all held their breaths and followed up with a spell to clear the air around them of any pollen. The Aesir had only sent 2 people here. Odin, who was holding his breath, and Tyr, who defiantly took another breath and vomited more blood but remained flying. Fighting this group, the ones who worried me the most were the fire giants. Not one of the 4 was a king magus, but their fire naturally restrained my plants. Loki, Volsung, take care of the fire giants. Fool, they can't fight if they are outnumbered. Odin, haven't you learned yet? I am a lot more prepared than you. And I expected you to have a lot more allies. Volsung, meanwhile, was walking towards the fire giants on the ground. Loki had stood back and prepared to attack after Volsung. We know you, Volsung. You are just a Grand Duke fighter with used-up potential. Die. From the palms of the fire giants a barrage of flames descended. Deep earth flames that could melt anything born of the earth, dreadful and feared by many, turning the ground into molten magma. Where Volsung had stood, a crater was faintly visible, releasing a pillar of black soot. Then, the dark cloud was parted by a gust of air. Another sweep of an object at an immense velocity cleared the smoke entirely. Then the object stopped midair, revealing a scaled, red tail, ending in a vicious-looking spike. The owner of that tail was naturally Volsung in beast mode, with the fire dragon bloodline I had given him. That aura. He has broken through to King Fighter, hasn't he? The fire giants were somewhat frightened. Despite there being more of them and their deep belief that magi were superior to fighters, they couldn't help feeling a little intimidation when going up against a king-level opponent. Of course, his level wasn't the only reason they felt intimidated. The broadsword that hadn't melted and the draconic features also did their part. In their momentary hesitation, the fire giants failed to notice Volsung bending his knees. The ground below caved in completely as Volsung launched himself into the air, flying straight towards the closest fire giant. The blade resting on his right shoulder swung down and cleaved apart the first fire giant. This action left Volsung falling from the sky. This was seen as an opportunity by the three remaining opponents, and they flew after him. Before they could fully reach him, Volsung twisted in the air, coming face to face with them. With a sickening crunch, a pair of majestic dragon wings broke through the flesh on his back. Fully spreading his wings, Volsung stopped falling. Then he flapped his wings once, closing the distance, and slashed again. Another fire giant was directly beheaded by the vertical slash. Simultaneously, Volsung's tail shot out and impaled the third fire giant, leaving only the weakest one who had been at the back. This fire giant had completely lost his composure and was retreating while wildly throwing flames and blazing clusters of magma. At some point, Loki had appeared behind him and stabbed a sinister-looking black dagger into the last giant's neck. All this had happened in only a few seconds, making it impossible for the others to react in time. Chapter 69: A True Aesir Doesn't Retreat. The Elven Queen looked troubled. Evidently, she hadn't expected the situation to turn out like this. For major powers had formed an alliance to take down a newly formed power, but now half of their upper echelons were already wiped out. The situation on the ground was only slightly better for them. The Aesir army had fully regained their bearings and managed to beat back both sides that pincer attacked them. Since both Odin and the Elven Queen were still hesitating, I could afford to meddle a little. At my command, the combat golems rose from the earth and joined the fight. With their suicidal advance, the Aesir were once again forced into a flustered defense. Odin finally made a move. He had a new spear that thankfully wasn't as strong as Gungnir. He stabbed towards me but couldn't do much damage due to my ever-increasing density. Only those crazy weapons such as Gungnir or Grammar could really cut me at this point. Elemental attacks were probably the only effective way of fighting me. Too bad that both the Jotuns and the fire giants were already defeated. Odin retreated a few steps, realizing the futility of his attempts. He turned towards the elves. Are the elves just going to stand back and watch this monster grow? You participated in this attack, don't think he will spare you. With silent determination in her eyes, the Elven Queen stopped hesitating. Her two subordinates nodded in silent understanding, and each drew a dagger and stabbed it into their hearts. As the life slowly faded from their eyes, the Queen waved her hand and grasped the near intangible energy. Skillfully manipulating that energy, a shimmering but translucent connection was formed between us. Suddenly, I felt a pull, my own vitality flowed out of me and to the Queen. Volsung and Loki wanted to interfere but were blocked by Tyr and Odin. Interestingly, the matchup was Volsung against Tyr and Loki against Odin. Tyr was only at the Grand Duke level but had seemingly reached this level as both a magus and a fighter. While he couldn't meet Volsung's attacks head-on, his decades of combat experience allowed him to dodge and counterattack. This wasn't a strategy to win but merely to stall for time, and thus very feasible. However, similar to Volsung, Odin found that while he was clearly stronger than his opponent, he couldn't defeat Loki in a short amount of time. Every now and then, Odin would randomly stab at empty air. I could only speculate that this was due to both Odin and Loki using their unique powers. Odin read Loki's next move and attacked preemptively only to meet air because Loki had used his powers of change to change his next move. Safe to say, the situation wouldn't see any major changes over the next hour or more, giving me ample time to focus on my own predicament. Well now, this is somewhat troublesome. Serves you right for being so arrogant. Now that I've established this life link between us, even you, as a king magus, can't sever it. And why would I need to sever this link? You probably aren't aware of this, but a link goes both ways. What does that matter? Watch and learn. The slow flow of vitality that left me was immediately reversed. Like gathering magic from the air, I pulled as hard as I could and began a tug-of-war with the Elven Queen. As the moment slipped by, it became more apparent that the Elven Queen wasn't my match. Her supple, pinkish skin first grew pale and then got more and more wrinkles. Her luscious blonde hair quickly turned into an aged white. The queen aged at a visible pace until she turned into an old crooked hag. Now, it was her who attempted to break the link established between us. Which, as she herself mentioned before, was a futile effort. Instead of breaking the link, her losing focus made it even easier for me to drain her. Once the last bit of vitality had left her body, she was but an empty, lifeless husk. A gust of wind blew past and the husk turned into dust as it scattered into the sky. Down below, as the elves witnessed their queen die, their morale hit rock bottom. Their formation broke completely and they turned to flee like a bunch of headless chicken. This in return caused the other three factions to lose all hope. Akin to a forest fire, despair spread through their rows, eroding their determination and making them to abandon their positions. Your troops are fleeing, Odin. It's over. A true Aesir doesn't retreat. This war isn't over until every last of us has fallen. Despite his words, Odin was visibly shaken as he caught a glance of his army retreating. Enough so that the always passive Loki managed to free himself long enough to throw a dagger at Tyr's back. This unexpected attack messed up Tyr's rhythm and forced him to receive one of Volsung's slashes. Volsung's broadsword shattered Tyr's blade and proceeded to dig into Tyr's shoulder, nearly splitting him in half. Gathering the remains of his strength, Tyr threw a punch at Volsung, hitting him square in the chest. However, Volsung didn't even budge. After getting an innate understanding of dragon strength, his physique had reached a scary level and he could simply disregard Tyr's last struggle. He twisted his broadsword and let Tyr's corpse drop to the ground. Now even Odin turned to flee, but things wouldn't be that easy for him. What are you doing, Odin? Is this what you call a tactical retreat? Here, accept this parting gift from me. Odin had only just turned around when a sharp object pierced his heart. Dungnir was successfully returned, and this battle was now truly over. But Loki seemed to think otherwise. Quick! We must pursue the fleeing armies and decimate them. Chapter 70, Enough Death and Suffering. No. What do you mean? Eldar, every second we waste here will give them more time to get further away. If you let them go now, they will be back for revenge once they have recovered. Shut it, Loki. They are defeated. Going after them now will only result in senseless slaughter, benefiting only the humans. In retrospect, you have been goading me from one fight to the next, using me to thoroughly clean the board. Your incitement has led to so much bloodshed, though I am also to blame. However, this all ends here. Loki seemed greatly vexed at the fact that he could no longer use me to overpower his enemies. He turned and went after the fleeing Aesir troops by himself. Volsung, I'll need some time to digest all that just happened. Could I trouble you to clean up and take care of the rest? Sure thing. With that, I sank my consciousness deep down my trunk and stopped using my magic perception. Truth be told, I was running away. I couldn't bring myself to look at the battlefield. I had never realized this before, but, after every battle, so many had died. I could feel the connections to my beasts that had turned dark, indicating they had died, and even without magic perception, I could feel the overwhelming air of death all around. How many had died? Too many. That was the simple answer. I shouldn't have let this happen. What would Lord Abel have done in my place? I shouldn't dwell too much on these issues. The past was the past and now was the present. Regret wouldn't change what had happened. I could only learn from this and try to do better from now on. I couldn't stop advancing. The only way for me to proceed was to get stronger. The ground around me was littered with the corpses of fallen powerhouses of 4 different races. Wasting this opportunity would mean all the people here had died for nothing. First, I absorbed the fire giants. Bits and pieces of their comprehensions were combined with the vague innate understanding of fire I had absorbed from the fire dragon. If I continued to invest a few years, I could surely have my own innate understanding of fire. Next were the Jotuns, giants of the icy north. From them, I could gain some understanding into the domain of frost and ice. Not nearly enough to form an innate understanding, but it was a good start. Finally, it was time for the main dish. Tyr had been a combat-oriented magus and fighter. His insights into these matters would be priceless. Odin was a king magus and had kindly given me the opportunity to have another artificial innate understanding. Sadly, I could find little use for clairvoyance powers. In my previous world, it was widely known that clairvoyance should only be used to see the opponent's moves during battle. The more time lay between the event happening and a clairvoyant seeing it, the worse the consequences. Some saw their own death and went mad trying to prevent it yet died all the same. Others tried to take advantage of the historical events they saw in the future but ended up making these events never happen. Overall, it was a scary power that shouldn't be used further than 5 minutes ahead. Once again leaving the confines of my body, my magic perception stretched out far and wide. All traces of the battlefield were gone and nothing reminded of the things that happened here. Not too far away, I found Sven sitting and meditating. As I focused on him, he woke up and greeted me. "Lord Eldar, it's nice to see you have recovered from the battle. How did you notice I was back? Your presence has grown rather heavy in recent times. I could clearly feel you looking at me." "Well, I have grown stronger at an insane pace, so it's no wonder that my presence has become somewhat oppressive." "But you have grown stronger too, haven't you? By now you are already a Count Magus." "It's all thanks to you, Lord Eldar. The bloodline you have bestowed upon me did wonders for my progress. I can feel it assisting me whenever I meditate." "That's good then. How long was I gone for?" "Close to 1 year now actually."